Check 1, 2, check. My name is R. Crosby Lyles, and this is news from the can. There's one less thing to worry about, and that is global warming. God, I hate to say it, but, it appears as though at least doomsday warming is, I don't really know how to characterize it, whether it's a scam or a hoax, or it looks like half of it is poison pill in order to discredit socialism, which basically boils down to some sort of fair tax scheme. You give the lefties a poison pill, global warming, which is not necessarily a thing. Doesn't appear to be. Now, let me show you what's up here. Those who have followed my channel, I got on this whole thing because of my video, The Armageddon Line, which is in a sense, is kind of a spoof piece. But the meaning behind that is that Art Bell and Whitley Strieber are not scientists. Art Bell, rest in peace, actually died last year. And, these guys are not scientists, and they never claimed to be scientists, but they were writing something that was supposed to be, I guess, a fictitious novel about something having to do with cataclysmic events throughout Earth's history. And they stumbled upon this artifact of natural history where there were great floods and rapid changes in the climate, where the climate would turn cold rapidly, as in woolly mammoths with green vegetation in their mouths, frozen in place. So their book came out around 98 or 99, I think maybe 1999. I read it in 2005, and I thought it was interesting. And, had to do a video about something. And just sort of farted that video out, frankly. Had to do a video about it. And it was actually a follow-up on the whole concept of magnetic field effects on ocean currents, which to me is interesting. There's some people that think ocean currents actually generate the magnetic fields of the Earth, which is not really plausible. But certainly magnetic fields can affect the oceans because the oceans are composed of salt water, which is a conductive fluid. And some chemists out there might argue with that characterization, and that's like a really technical point. But basically, current will flow through seawater, and if current will flow through it, then the material, the movement, what's called the transport, which is currents, can obviously be affected, and those effects become more visible on planetary scales. It's a function of the strength of the magnetic field and the scale. And when you start talking about large scales, then you can start to see effects. So it just makes sense that when the magnetic field changes, that ocean currents can change, and that might necessarily have an effect on the North Atlantic current, which would affect climate. Could that trigger an ice age? Probably. So anyway, and then it got down, and somehow or another, at that point, because of the nature of Google, my suggested videos ended up being videos from Guy McPherson and people like that who were claiming that mankind was going to be extinct in 9 years, and that was damn near 9 years ago that they were talking about this. I think 2009 is when it started coming out. When was Al Gore came out with his movie, The Inconvenient Truth, 2006, and he said there was never going to be, our children wouldn't know what a snowflake was and all this kind of stuff, and don't really know what was up with Al Gore at that point. Somebody, I guess he was looking at some data from the military maybe or something. That's what they thought. And it's still a thing, this is Hiroko Tabuchi from the New York Times. This piece was put out February 19, 2020, and this is the New York Times, and basically this backs up everything I've been talking about over the past 6 months or so, which is obvious. If you just and you don't have to be a scientist. All you have to do is just look at the available data that's readily available. You can look at it. The Copernicus satellite was designed, put in place. They put out the data for the specific purpose of shaming emitters of various pollutants, including those that might cause global warming. And it was a claim that I made in the Armageddon Line that methane is 84 times more potent than CO2. On the short term, the 20-year time scale, you'll see that in this article. I'm not going to read the whole thing. but the link is in the description. Read it. But here's the thing. Hiroko interviews a couple of people in here from Harvard. Let's see, they were underestimating the effect of man-made natural gas leaks by 25 to 40%. Daniel J. Jacob, professor of atmospheric chemistry and environmental engineering at Harvard University, also described the finding as significant. Current estimates of methane from geologic sources were widely considered too high by atmospheric modelers such as myself, he wrote. So, and why is this important? This is important because one of the claims of one of the fears distributed by people like Guy McPherson. I don't really want to harp on Guy McPherson too much. I consider most people to be good faith agents, more or less. Their ballywick, their whole fucking, how they make their living is going back and forth about climate change, being on one side or the other. There's money to be made in this whole argument about, is climate change a thing caused by CO2 or not? And the answer is, yeah, probably, but it's really fucking complicated. And I'm going to get to that more about that in a second. But here's the thing. They go right from talking about that the estimate of natural gas leaks were too low, and that by far and away, and this is what I found, by far and away that leaks from oil, gas, exploration and infrastructure, and even where the gas is being piped in to use to generate electricity and so forth, that those leaks by far and away blow away any other emissions. It's just really obvious, and it's obvious from the Copernicus satellite. But there's no mention of that in this article. Now, I guess due diligence, I should probably give this lady a call, and I don't know if anybody minds being called a lady anymore, but yeah, this woman here, give her a call, and maybe the professor at Harvard and stuff like that. And I want to tell you something that happens to me all the time because of who I am and being a convicted felon and all that kind of stuff. It's like I'll put stuff out on the web, and then next thing you know, somebody's getting a peer-reviewed paper on it. And they don't bother to mention me. So which is worse? I got in trouble one time in my life. I didn't have so much as a parking ticket when I got locked up. And that was a one-time fucking deal in the shit happens category. And now all of a sudden it's okay to just, take my ideas and go ahead and get a peer-reviewed paper on it and not happen to mention that you got the idea from me. Fuck you very much. So, And then they'll, I don't know. I don't know if any of my videos have ever been flagged or what, but I noticed that, it's such a racket, and people are just such scum. I might as well vent right now. YouTube, what a bunch of scumbags. They went through this whole thing where, they want to make their videos more kid-friendly and stuff like that. And it's like, where's all this shit coming from? Well, it's because they got in trouble with the FTC because they were marketing to kids between 2 to 12, And so they got in front of the FTC and they said, oh, no, our platform is designed for 14 and over or 13 and over, whatever the hell it was. And they got their lawyers in there and they beat the case and all that kind of stuff. Then come to find out they were sending out memos to advertisers touting how their platform was favored the most amongst the 2 to 12 age group, which I guess is a really juicy demographic to sell to. You know what I mean? And so what they did is they just made it such that now the FTC can come in and fine an individual creator for making material that's designed for children when they say it's not supposed to be designed for, and all this. And basically what they're doing is that they're putting all of the risk onto the creators. And creators are just getting, we're just getting gang raped, basically. It's just more slavery. And you have no power. They have all the power. And, and they're just scumbags. Bottom line. So anyway, there's that. They have no mention of the Copernicus satellite. So any idiot like me can go to the Copernicus satellite and look at stuff like this. This is the total column of ozone. Now, let's see, what is this? 600, it's in DU, which is Dobson units. probably has something to do with Dobson from Brewer-Dobson. Brewer-Dobson circulation is what you see prevalent in the stratosphere. I'm not necessarily an expert, but I know a little bit more than your average pedestrian because I have studied engineering and I have studied chemistry, college chemistry, not high school chemistry, as some people, that's the first thing out of somebody's mouth, whatever. So anybody can look at this and you look at that and you go, holy shit, what the fuck is that? If you don't know enough to know to be able to say that, holy shit, what the fuck is that? From the total column of ozone. Holy shit, what the fuck is that? That's my reaction. I don't know what yours is. Now this is the equator. And you can tell just from looking at this is recent data. This is Tuesday, the 17th of March. It's probably because I've had to sit on this for a little while. I got interrupted when I was in the middle of making this, and I'm just gonna talk. I'm not gonna really edit this too much, because a lot of you guys probably have some time on your hands. I know I'm sequestered right now, sequestered. I had a little cold last week. We went on a cruise that my wife and I go on every year. So it's her thing. We're not going on it next year for various reasons, but anyway. And that was a great cruise. I gotta tell you, Mark Farner from Grand Funk is amazing. I mean, the guy's 70-ish years old, and he looks like he runs around like he always ever did. The guy is amazing. He's an amazing musician. He's got more energy than kids a tenth of his age. Him and Roger Daltrey. Roger Daltrey's like 75 years old. My grandfather died when he was 73, and this guy just looks, my grandfather looked like Leonid Brezhnev. When he died, he was, he could barely breathe and shit. But Roger Daltrey is another amazing one. He's just got such vitality. You got to know he's taking care of himself. But anyway, back to this. The Dobson unit is a unit of measure for the total amount of ozone in the atmosphere above a point on the Earth's surface. One Dobson unit being equivalent to a layer of pure ozone 0.01 millimeters thick at standard temperature and pressure. Yeah, go figure. Usually there's an ozone hole that had opened up over the Antarctic, which, who gives a fuck about the Antarctic? It ain't nothing but snow down there. What are you worried about? Some penguins getting a fucking sunburn or some shit like that? You know what I'm saying? This is a little bit of an ozone hole-ish. Now this is at 50 hectopascals, which is about 60,000 feet in elevation. It's in the stratosphere. But here's the thing to look at right here on the equator. Now, I don't know if you necessarily want to characterize that as a hole, but it's less. It's less ozone than what I would imagine should probably be there. And there could be other reasons for that. I don't know what the kind of effect formaldehyde has on that. Formaldehyde comes from burning brush. And methane, the lion's share of it comes from rice production in India and China. Ozone is formed from volatile organic compounds. Methane is the chief among them. In fact, they have a characterization, like a sub thing that says non-methane volatile organic compounds, but that's where this comes from. That's where this ozone right here comes from. It comes from methane. It's a clear present footprint, can't escape it. And this, this flows around between the 40th parallel and the, it's basically the Arctic Circle. And as it goes up, it dissipates. Let me cut to the chase here with this. This is methane at the surface level. And this, basically, you see that right there, surface level. This shows you who the emitters are. And this is what the Copernicus satellite is for. This is why they put this up. This is publicly available. Link is in the description. You can go look at it yourself. You can look at the surface level. You can look at, and here's 850 hectopascals, which I think is about 1,200 feet up, roughly. Looks pretty ugly. That's 500 hectopascals, which is 15,000 feet, I think, something like that. That's pretty gnarly. Look at that, all right up there in this one spot here. This line is actually the North Pole. That's all one spot. It looks funny, I know, but because it's a flat map, that's all. So this entire schmaltz here is right around the North Pole, geologic north. And that's, wow. 300 hectopascals, not so much. You get up to 50 hectopascals, nothing, zero. This is important. That black means nothing. Ain't shit, right? Zero. Right there you can see it. Zero. That's at the North Pole right there. That one line is the North Pole. So all the way down to, I don't know, 70, 60 degrees north latitude in some places, and it just wafts around. So the methane at that point is concentrated around the equator. So where higher levels of methane exist, you have less. I've gone over this a few times. You have less ozone. Okay? And so it's pretty obvious. You go to the surface level, you can see with your own eyes where the big emitters are. But here's the thing about this. I just want to point this out. And this kind of goes to some of the clathrate alarmists. The green here is about 2 parts per million, roughly, right over the surface. And my question is this, and I haven't really raised this before because it's pretty obvious. The big emitters are man-made. And this is from infrastructure. This is from natural gas infrastructure. This up here, I think, is a gas installation from Russia. The uptick comes from 2006 when they really got heavy into fracking. That's when the uptick in methane began. So they pretty much know it's from man-made efforts. However, it is interesting that there's this residual right over the surface of the ocean, of the Arctic Ocean and stuff. Is it possible that some of that is, wafting up from subsea sources? Yeah, it is possible. And has anybody, and this would be a good thing to do, I'd have to whip out some machinery and have the time to actually sit down and do it, to do an analysis of how much that this is, because this is right over the surface. We'll have to assume that it's between 0 and 2 meters, which is about 6 feet above the surface. I'm only guessing. That's probably what it is. So we'll see. But it's possible some of that could be from subsea sources. And then you get to the punchline. Can you shut that door, please? Thanks, babes. My wife just got home. And so there's the punchline right there. This white right here, that means that the temperature is nominal. And here's the data source. Weather maps on this page depict output from the operational NOAA Global Forecast System, GFS, commonly known as a GFS. GFS utilizes a 13-kilometer finite volume cube sphere dynamical core FV3 to produce 16-day forecast 4 times daily. The maps here are generated using NCAR command language NCL. Daily means are calculated from 8 3-hourly time slices beginning at 0 universal time. Universal time is midnight right here. The 0 line, which is Greenwich time essentially, right there. When it's right there in the middle, midnight, that's 0 UTC. So there it is. And that little pink coloration there, that means that it's maybe, wow, holy shit, it's like 20 degrees, as much as 20 degrees below the 1979 to 2000 baseline, which they lowered because I guess there were some effects that, from global warming that happened. But basically, when you look at that, any idiot looks at that, it's not compelling. Yeah, there's a little warm spot there, and a lot of times these warm spots have to do with precipitation. Precipitation is the how heat from that's gathered in the oceans is expressed in the atmosphere. That's what you get. You get precipitation. Evaporation is the endothermic process at the surface, and then that is expressed in convection, and then the exothermic process that allows that heat to escape happens at the cloud top where the precipitation forms. So that heat right there that's snow. That big orange blob right there is snow. And a lot of these orange blobs are a lot of times they're snow. So it's snowing right there where that big orange blob is, right? That big scary orange blob, and it's snowing right there, and it's snowing right here where that big orange blob is. And it's about anywhere between 10 and 20 degrees below the 79, 2000 baseline right there. So it's not compelling, right? And why this is important, the big scare was that when you had global warming, it would cause a clathrate collapse on the seafloor, or and what clathrate is methane hydrate, that you would have a big methane hydrate release, and then once all that methane released, then you would have a feedback loop where the Earth would basically just fry. We would just go to Permian Triassic meltdown right then and there. And when any idiot looks at this, you can see that shit ain't happening. And the reason that doesn't happen, my hypothesis is that, and it may have come around before, is that when that methane is released, it's much lighter than air. It goes right for the stratosphere, which you can see. There it is. It goes right for the stratosphere, and in the stratosphere, no more methane. Boom, that turns into water vapor and carbon dioxide. Here's your carbon dioxide in the stratosphere, 50 hectopascals, 60,000 feet. And you see this nice little ribbon here. That's about 1,000, well, what do they say? Oh, they changed it. It's 600 parts per million. Okay, so they did some tinkering. Because this is what it looked like. Okay, November 30th, 2019. You got to look at the date up here. Now, why the hell, on this output, why the hell they don't put the damn year on there? You know what I mean? That's really annoying. You can't put 2020 on there somewhere, guys, so that, you know what I mean? When somebody takes a snap of this, you can see. It's just really obnoxious. Anyway, so you can kind of see. That's what it looked like back then. It looks a whole hell of a lot scarier than this shit over here. And now this is in the spring, of course. Carbon dioxide starts to wane in the northern hemisphere. And it starts to pick up a little bit in the southern hemisphere. But you can see right there. I mean, there it is. And then I left a couple of comments on a video over at Potholer's channel, you know. And Potholer's like, well, what are you talking about? You know, giving me a hard time about why are you talking about ozone, you know, on this video, but it was about something else. And I'm like, and I told him, look, it's because I want you to take a look at it. You know what I mean? Because something's going on over there. And then, like, the next day or a couple of days later, I don't know what kind of pull old Potholer's got, but very shortly after that, the Copernicus satellite data for methane and carbon dioxide went down, and when it came back up, it looked like this. It didn't look like that anymore. It looked like this. So, you know, which one was wrong? You know, was this too much? And why would you, you know, you guys are like scientists. What the hell? You know what I'm saying? Did you thought that was too scary, or was this wrong? And, you know, and yeah, I'm going to call them people and really have a conversation. I think somebody should. You know what I'm saying? You know, what the hell, man? So anyway, right now the COVID thing is going on. And of course that blows all this out of the news cycle. So, but what I look at, when I'm looking at, and you know, this is nothing to worry about. Basically, the worst thing happened. It was basically a man-made methane pulse, essentially. is what we're looking at. Maybe a little bit on a little bit of a slower time scale than a complete, release, but basically nothing that dramatic happened. It's pretty much business as usual because the Earth's climate system is complicated. It's a two-fluid system, seawater, air, and the mixing and the rates that they, precipitation and all that stuff, the world didn't come to an end, at least not yet. But what I look at is I look at stuff like this. These artifacts here, if you want to call them that. And this is geopotential height. This is probably the most useful thing to look at on here. What you're looking at is you're looking at the air masses. This is a function of temperature and pressure. And where air is rising, so you're looking at the level of, this is in what's called decameters. So this is actually 5,095 meters, because the decameter is tens of meters. So 595 tens of meters is, 5,095. And this is 4,095. So the spread here is 1,000 meters, 3,000 feet roughly. But that's the level of 500 hectopascals, which is 500 millibars, right? And that's important because you can see where your weather patterns, you can look at this, and I can look at this right now, and this line right here, that's where basically where the jet stream is. So I see these green spots out by themselves. And those are areas where there's a dip. So you have to look at this as like a surface. The orange spots are where the air bubble is high. The blue spots are where the air bubble is low. Air flows downhill, but because of Coriolis forces, as this high air flows downhill to this, it moves because it's going from further out near the equator. As it moves towards the poles, it actually outruns the Earth and causes the air to flow along this line. So that jet stream flows along this point here. But these are low spots. And it's like, okay, what's going to cause a low spot way out in the middle of the ocean like that? And some of these are associated with lower level lows. So it's basically an upper level low, essentially. And these are associated with lower level lows. Let's see, right, this is a hurricane, which is what Venture Sky is good for. That's basically all I use Venture Sky for. It'll show you right there. There's a cyclone, and they got all kinds of stuff on here. It's nice. You can see how the winds are moving and things like that. But you look at this. I mean, it's March 18th. It's still plenty frigid in Greenland. Negative 42 degrees Fahrenheit. I'll tell you, from a global warming perspective, it's not really that compelling. Now anything can happen. It could turn on a dime, whatever. But, that's the upshot. That's one less thing to worry about. You know what I mean? If you were worried about human extinction, I would be much more concerned about the viruses and things that are coming out of Asia than I would about anything happening with the climate. And as far as if climate change is going to be making the climate drier or whatever and causing more forest fires, then that means you're going to have to have a little uptick on your forest management, right? I mean, you're going to have conditions that are going to be conducive to forest fires, and forest fires are a problem, and you don't want to lose wildlife because of forest fires. Maybe that means that it's a good time to do some forest management. So, with everything going on in the world, obviously, it's time for us to grow up and get a little bit smarter about things. One caveat here about this, ozone is a greenhouse gas. It's kind of interesting how that ozone is looks like it's, right? And it's kind of wrapping up there, but it's also like really cold up there. Correlation is not necessarily causation and all that kind of stuff. Ozone. I've heard people say that it causes, it can coalesce water droplets, maybe and form fog, clouds, things like that. That's something that carbon dioxide does. Carbon dioxide coalesces water droplets, forms clouds, and fog and things like that, which blocks sunlight. There's an albedo effect from that, and so a lot of people have poo-pooed the idea that water vapor in the stratosphere can cause global cooling. What about in the mesosphere? Does any of that water vapor get into the mesosphere and all of that? But just looking at the data, it doesn't look like we've triggered any kind of cascade failure. And the thing about it is that the global food industry, we got food coming out our frickin' ears. You know what I'm saying? There's always a big scare about food and stuff like that. I don't know. I guess it could happen. We could have an economic meltdown of the whole world behind this COVID-19 stuff. Wuhan bat snake. But, why worry? What we're doing now is the thing to do, which is, everybody sort of, you do the social distancing thing and not, and so that we don't have everybody getting sick all at the same time. Flatten the curve, so to speak. That's what everybody's talking about. And that's, you got to do that. That's the tool you have. So there's nothing to fear but fear itself. Do what you got to do. COVID's not deadly to everybody, but it's, it's the deadliest when everybody gets sick all at the same time, which is what we're trying to prevent. And that's it. And I mentioned it before, what people are really worry about is they worry about disease. China, according to them, they're going to be, they're banning the sale of wild animals, which is where all this crap comes from. The wet markets, live markets, whatever the hell you call them, in China is where all this stuff, it's like a disease factory. So yeah, they need to shut that down because this is getting old already. You know what I mean? Obviously, it's a problem. Tighten up, China. Right? Tighten up. And that's it. You can see, for all these links are in the description, you can see for yourself. And I don't think anybody's really worried about it. I think global warming is kind of sort of passé at this point. It's like, yeah, doesn't look like it's, bro, just doesn't look like it's happening. I mean, yeah, you're going to have probably going to have some heat waves in the summer. But the other thing too is what kind of knock-on effect is all that ozone going to have? Is it going to kill insects? Is it dangerous to plants? How is that going to affect? How is that much ozone going to affect the biosphere? That's one of my concerns. Acid rain is a big one. Something that we really don't talk about. Everybody talks about carbon dioxide. There's nitrogen oxide. That's acid rain forming material right there. That's something that just doesn't go away. Interesting knock-on effect of what's going on with the methane and what have you is just seems to be a little less nitrogen dioxide around the equator, which is fascinating. In certain parts of you can kind of see a band there that goes along with the carbon dioxide. There's that, and of course sulfur dioxide, which is from burning coal, burning fossil fuels. And this is another interesting, look at that, there's a hole there, which is fascinating. So that's kind of interesting where this is. Okay. Sulfur dioxide is acid rain forming. In the 80s, half of all sulfur emissions came from fossil fuels. The other half was from other sources, volcanic and otherwise. So it's something we have complete and total control of. But we don't really talk about that. Nobody really talks about that. And that's about it. I had thought that these lines here might have been from air traffic. Probably not. It's probably from sea traffic. Because when I was on this cruise, you can actually look up the location of the ship that you're on. And there's just so much sea traffic out there that, yeah, that line right there is probably from sulfur. Yeah, it's probably from the emissions from ships. Going back and forth, going around the Horn of Africa. And that's it. My name is R. Crosby Lyles. Take care of yourselves. Yeah, I would stay sequestered. Ride it out. It's going to be fine. We're going to be fine. I get more thoughts on that specifically, but I wanted to get back to you guys about this situation. And, you know, everybody's going to keep talking about whatever they're talking about. You know, but you know, it just doesn't look all that. You know, the global climate catastrophe thing just doesn't look all that compelling to me right now. And that's it. One less thing to worry about. And that's all I got. My name is R. Crosby Lyles. Thanks for watching. See you.